For the last time in the month of April, the CBB Central podcast is underway. We are in the peak of transfer season. We've got combine invites. We've got G League camp invites. We've got plenty to talk about, Brad, even though we're almost 200 days from college basketball getting underway once again. The first stuff we do have to talk about, Brad, is stuff that maybe isn't fun to talk about. I mean, it's a lot of fun to talk about. It's just kind of out there still, and that's the FBI investigation and trials now into college basketball. Christian Dawkins is on trial right now for bribery. That's brought a lot of fun tidbits onto the Twitter timeline over the last week or so.
Absolutely. I mean, we got the stuff today with Will Wade and more offers on tape. We have Book Richardson. I guess he exhausted his retirement savings, or dipped into his retirement savings to pay for guys. We have now people on camera like Preston Murphy from Creighton and Corey Barker from TCU, and Richardson and Tony Bland all were on video, I guess, accepting money. So that's a tough look there. And we're still waiting for any real tangible impact in terms of Sean Miller and Will Wade, who are both still employed currently. So it would be very interesting if they get fired relatively quickly, and then the coaching carousel starts up again so late. That'd be very scary for some teams.
The best content from this whole thing was, they were talking about how Christian Dawkins and Marty Blazer, who'd basically been flipped by the FBI, and then an undercover agent, had hosted this party at the Cosmo in Vegas during a recruiting weekend, and all these coaches come, and then there's Robert Williams needs money, Amir Abdul-Rahim wanted to send Robert Williams money, so they literally sent him a shoe full of money, $11,000 in cash in a shoe. This is just pure movie stuff. It's unbelievable. As far as making the coaching carousel turn, I don't think it will. I think for me, it's Arizona should absolutely fire Sean Miller, regardless of what's on the tapes and what isn't. It is clear that you had two assistant coaches now who were working and breaking NCAA rules under your watch at the same time, because you already had Mark Phelps, who he's fired now. I don't know if he was suspended. I think he was fired in the Sharif O'Neal transcript saga. And then you have this with Book Richardson, paying many players, Raleigh Alkins, paying families of players, Alonzo Trier, DeAndre Ayton. At some point, the buck's on you to run your program clean. At minimum, this is going to be a pretty major NCAA penalty, which could, Arizona's top 10 team preseason. We both agree on this. And I don't think there's any guarantee they'll be in the postseason.
Which is a shame, because, Nico Mannion is going to be one of the best players in college basketball as a freshman. He's Trae Young, but he's not. He's like Trae Young light. He's a little more reined in. Doesn't have quite the upside Trae Young, but he's a excellent player. A lot of people like Josh Green on the wing. Great athlete, and they're supplementing these great recruits with a ton of returning talent. Guys like Chase Jeter, who's been around for a while at center. Stone Gettings was the first grad transfer off the board from Cornell, to be a stretch four. And they have another stretch four who was a top 30 recruit in Zeke Njai. They're just loaded top to bottom. This is a deep roster with a mix of youth and experience. So they can be really, really, really good. LSU doesn't look quite as good, depending on who comes back. If they lose everyone who's declared, or even most of the people who declared, they're not going to be very good. But if Skylar Mays comes back, Emmett Williams comes back, Javonte Suarez probably not coming back. But if they get Mays and Williams, they can put together an NCAA tournament team.
Yeah, they could. I wouldn't rule it out. I will kind of note one thing kind of regarding this whole stuff is especially regarding the $300,000 Will Wade to Naz Reid offer. I think that's crazy. First of all. I said I texted a source and said, how much money did Will Wade have to spend? And the source basically reminded you, remember, these guys are out there blowing smoke to a certain degree in order to gain clout and gain activity. And like, I think this is like very real. Like when I talk to coaches, there is definitely a name drop culture and like a look at like what's impressive about me culture. And so I think, saying, oh, I got 300,000 to spend to get Naz Reid is a way of, flexing your muscles, saying, look what I got. I don't know that 300,000 is the actual offer to Naz Reid. I do think that there was absolutely an offer in place for Naz Reid. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind with these money numbers is like these guys are all trying to make themselves look good and look the best as possible. So I think it's tough to kind of put these numbers out there, but it's very clear, that there was a widespread breaking rules. Every assistant coach, who wants to do business with these guys probably should be unemployed right now.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of the amount of the offer, I mean, 300,000 is absurd for a guy who's going to be your like second or third best player for 1 year. Like everyone knew Naz Reid was going to be a one and done. Like he obviously helped them, but he couldn't have helped them to the point that generated like $300,000, worth of value. I mean, maybe I'm just vastly underestimating, the value of these teams.
I guess I would put it in perspective of like the Brian Bowen. Like we've always used like Brian Bowen's 100,000 as like the barometer, right? Is Naz 3 times Brian Bowen? No.
And I mean, Brian Bowen was not very good. Like Reid's much better,
right.
But the fact that you knew going in you were only going to get 1 year of Reid, where maybe you get 3 years of Brian Bowen, maybe even 4 years of Brian Bowen. And when I say he's not very good, like he would have been a very good college player, but like at the combine last year, I mean, he was exposed as being a couple tiers below the guys in attendance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and partially that was just like the amount of time he hadn't played basketball, but like at the same time, I would say like, yeah, I mean, he just hasn't proven that he's like a high level like NBA prospect where some of these guys are. But yeah, I don't know what you think of all this stuff. I don't think we're gonna get this coaching carousel moving since we know that Sean Miller wouldn't have to testify. That was the big thing, was once it was possible that Sean Miller and potentially Will Wade would have to testify because they were mentioned in taps played by the defense, or not by the defense, by the prosecution, excuse me. That was going to open up some floodgates where probably Sean Miller would probably take the fifth, but it would cause the attorneys, especially for Christian Dawkins, to really make it clear that Sean Miller was cheating and potentially play some wiretaps that indicate that. So that could open things up. I will say the other thing that Gary Parrish, I believe it was noted, or it might have been, I think it was actually Wetzel, was that the more this kind of swings in favor of the prosecution as it has over the last few days, the more likely it is that Christian Dawkins testifies, which could bring some really fun tidbits to the stand.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's going to be interesting, like we're saying, like we don't know if Miller and Wade are going to get fired. I mean, it's obviously easier to fire an assistant like a Preston Murphy or a Corey Parker or something. But like there's so many different teams that are like tangentially involved, like based on Dawkins's quote unquote ledger, his book of debits and credits he had. But it's gonna be interesting to see, like, will a team like Creighton, which their penalty or their alleged involvement was steering Justin Patton to an agent, right? Like how are they going to be penalized in relation to some of these other teams, like teams that like it was like, was it Villanova or like Michigan State just had like the coach went out to dinner with the agent, which if certain things happen, it's illegal. Certain things happen, it's not. So I mean, there's just so much gray area here. And if guys like Wade and Miller, who seem to be the most culpable, I mean, if they're going to be fine, I mean, this whole thing could realistically blow over.
I will say also, I think the Zion recruiting was something that was interesting, and really just kind of something that I wanted to touch on in general was like Zion's recruiting was a field day, apparently, based on the stuff played from Clemson. You had Zion's dad, I believe it was, stepdad, someone like that, meeting with Steve Smith, the Clemson assistant, like 30 minutes outside of Vegas so they wouldn't get caught. You had like Zion's like home being like Clemson assistant going to Zion's home multiple times. when they weren't allowed to, like all these like weird things that are very like clearly violations of the rules. And then you also had like there was a rumor a while back like Kansas was playing, or it wasn't even a rumor. It was like was it Townsend, I believe it was, who was trying to coordinate payments. He's like, oh well, we're gonna have to find a way to do it if we have to get Zion Williamson. And it's like, oh yeah, did he just choose Duke for free? Same with like Jared Vanderbilt was going to get paid by TCU, I believe it was, like all that stuff, right? Like it's just crazy to me that like all these kids like would have went to Kentucky and Duke for free.
Yeah, I mean, it does make financial. It makes sense. Like going to Kentucky or Duke. I mean, it helps your brand a lot. Secondly, they've proven to be able to get guys into the NBA. But the guys that they're getting in the NBA are so talented they could really get into the NBA anywhere. So while you could maybe make an argument that it's worth it to go to Duke for 1 year, it certainly worked for Zion Williamson. It's not going to work for every Zion Williamson. There's a Trayvon Duvall. So I highly doubt that they went for free. But if they were going to go somewhere for free, it would be Duke or Kentucky.
Yeah,
not Clemson.
I'll buy that. I will.
And, I mean, speaking of Jared Vanderbilt, I mean, he was seen as a TCU lean for a very, very long time, and then all of a sudden it was just Kentucky.
Well, yeah. I mean, you wonder what happened.
Maybe Kentucky decided that they could raise their offer from free to something.
They were allocating more resources, as the word is. Anyway, this will be fun to watch for the next couple of weeks, and we'll update you on the podcast as much as we can. I think the best thing we can do on this is really just summarize it in a way that makes sense to people that Twitter may not, because it is kind of hard to follow. Like every 4 hours, Matt Norlander, Dan Wetzel, and like two other reporters like go outside and they like tweet out a big thread and they're like, "Sorry, got to go back in." It's kind of a fun mess to watch, but definitely a little confusing if you're not following very closely.
Absolutely. Should we move on to some transfers?
Yes, we should. We should absolutely talk about some transfers. So we're going to start and just kind of run through as many transfers that have happened in the last week or so as we can, because there's a lot of important ones. And kind of through that, we'll touch on some kind of methodology stuff in the middle in terms of what we think. And then we'll also touch on our your preseason transfer rankings if we have the time.
Yeah. So in terms of the methodology, basically, Kevin and I were speaking earlier today on Twitter about kind of scholarship allocation. Like you have a need. How do you balance taking an inferior player, presumably, who fills the need, or kind of holding the scholarship for something better to come along? Is basically what the whole crux of the conversation was. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it came about because you tweeted with Barrett Benson and going to SIU and Vernon Boyd going to Cal Baptist, two guys who you saw as like fringe high major players, where like they could probably play for a high major, but they're unlikely to be a high impact guy. Those guys could have went high majors, grad transfers, and played less. They're going to go to mid majors and play more. But your assumption is that if they had high major offers, they would have taken.
Well, so the whole kind of start of this for me, guys like, I mean, I guess Tracy Carter's a bad example because he wasn't great at LaSalle this year, but he goes from Marquette to LaSalle to now Hartford. Chad Lott averaged like 14 points a game in the MEAC. He's going to a South Alabama, which is a jump. But then a guy like Brandon Boyd, I mean, let's be honest. I've never seen Brandon Boyd play. Right? He played for Idaho State. Averaged like 14-4. Okay, but so like there's a very strong chance that he's just not that good. Right? He's a good player on a bad team, and would be exposed if he went up a level.
The Jeff Goodman scouting report on him, I believe, was like undersized combo who's really quick and a decent passer.
He's like faster than fast or something.
Yes.
With the ball. But so when you look at who needs a grad transfer versus how many are left, specifically at point guard and center, there's so many more teams that need one than there are available, which made me think that, after Pipkins goes to Providence, Kimball goes to Louisville, I thought these guys like Terrell Allen, Brandon Boyd, a couple others. Chad Lott. I mentioned Terrell Allen. There's Donald Gresham. Guys like that. I thought that they would kind of be reached. Like your Gonzaga or like your Cincinnati, who need a point guard, will say, you know what, let's just take a flyer on this guy. Maybe he's not that good, but we'll get a veteran here. And if he's not good, we only have him for a year, and we can play in Cincinnati's case, Logan Johnson. In Gonzaga's case, Brock Ray. If the grad transfer is bad, we'll just go to the freshman.
Yeah.
Or sophomore.
Like Quinton Adlish, like going to USC. Like that's not as big a need spot as he could have found at like Northwestern.
Exactly. And then in regards to like Terrell Allen, I mean, there are teams who I'm saying need a grad transfer, who like a Florida State was one team that I pegged before they got a JUCO kid, because they were losing David Nichols, and they could use like a kind of a scoring guard who could play next to Trent Forrest coming off the bench, right? A team like Syracuse, I mean, they could be fine with Jalen Carey playing point guard, but if they could upgrade with like a grad transfer for a bridge for 1 year until Carey's a junior, that could be a nice alternative. Then you have teams like Cincinnati, Northwestern, Gonzaga, who desperately need someone to play point guard. So I was surprised that these guys either didn't get the interest, like a Terrell Allen didn't get like a Gonzaga offer, or Brandon Boyd didn't get a Gonzaga offer, or they received the offer and kind of chose the path with more playing time at like a less relevant spot.
Right, and like with the Georgetown, when's Terrell Allen going to play?
He's like at best like the seventh man.
I mean,
sixth or seventh.
I think he gets like 20 minutes a night, right? He takes 10 minutes for when Akinjo's not playing point guard. He takes 10 minutes when Mac McClung's out, and you're playing a two point guard backcourt. 20 minutes, which is what he played at UCF, which is fine minutes, but it's like you'd have the ball if you're going to Northwestern. You'd probably get more point guard time if you're going to go to Gonzaga. So it is very interesting. And wasn't Brandon Boyd connected to Gonzaga at one point?
I'm not sure. I saw his offer list. The best spot in my opinion where I think he should have gone, right, was Utah, right? Because Utah loses Bearfield. They have like a JUCO guy in the mix, a freshman in the mix. But I mean, he could have started, and they did a similar thing last year with Novak Topalovic, where they had a guy in Jace Johnson, but they took Topalovic to be kind of like a bridge, and Johnson beat him out, and Topalovic was a backup center, but no harm done. But we upgraded at that position. Utah has Ryland Jones and Jackson Brenchley, both newcomers. I thought this would be a good spot for Brandon Boyd, and if he's not good, then either Brinkley or Jones gets the job.
Right, and at this point, the grad transfer point guard market is like Lindsey Drew, who might not graduate and might not leave Nevada. So that's the first. Those are the two main caveats there. Javen Cumberland, who's not really a point guard, he's more like a shooter, but he could you could play him there in like desperation. You're talking about a guy like Bakari Evelyn from Valpo, averaged like 10 and 3. Is a viable option. Hauser from Santa Clara, he put up like decent numbers there at one point in his career. He's like a doable grad transfer point guard.
Donald Gresham.
Yeah, Donald Gresham, who I mentioned. There's the Jalen Fisher thing that's looming out there. He's on a grad transfer, but he might wind up getting immediate eligibility, I would think, especially in this climate. The grad transfer market for point guards is so bad right now. So let's say like Brandon Boyd go to Cal Baptist was very surprising. I would agree. Or like Danon Swoop goes to Sam Houston State. That one popped earlier. It's kind of the same idea, right? Like 12-4. He's like a 12-4 guy at Elon. He goes to Sam Houston State. He could have gone bigger. And like the thing, we have to like step back quickly and say like, okay, these are also like people who want to go to like places where they're going to play college basketball and like play for coaches they like and like get minutes and like all these things. But it's also like there's clear paths to bigger programs.
Right. And I mean that it benefits you to play for a bigger program. And if the program, needs an upgrade, it benefits them to pursue you. And so I made a list of the teams that I think could use a grad transfer point guard. And I'll split it really quick to where I think someone could start versus where I think they'd play a major bench role and still be worthy of going there. I mean, starting UCLA, Cincinnati, Gonzaga, St. Louis, LaSalle, Northwestern, Georgia, Utah, Clemson, Illinois State, and Maryland if Anthony Cowan leaves. And then you also have Florida State, who I should take off now. But that's 8 or 9 places where they could use starting a point guard. And there's only 2 available, if that.
Yeah. No, there's nothing out there right now. There's the 2 guards who are really point guard. Or the 2 guards who are going to get forced in the point guard. And there's, I guess you can reclassify some kids. There's some late guys out there. If I was a low level high major in an A10 school, I'd take Noah Hutchins from the City Rocks. Watched him this weekend at UIBL. He's a shifty 6-foot kid who can get to the rim, decent shooter. I think he'd be fine. Put up good numbers. But there's just not a lot of point guards out there. So for teams who need them, they got to move quick.
One team that needed a point guard and got one, but it's technically a sit-out transfer. Kenny Cooper going to Western Kentucky from Lipscomb. This was kind of another methodology thing I wanted to bring up. With this new waiver climate, is it viable to take a sit-out transfer and just pray that he gets a waiver?
I think if there's a reason why. So if they're coming home, yes. Baba Parham, who we'll touch on in a sec, is going to be an hour from home. You imagine Georgia Tech is going to try to get him a waiver.
Definitely.
Kenny Cooper had a coaching change and would still be close to where he was at school originally. So maybe the coaching change waiver has never really worked, but if they move on that, then we're going to have just open season.
Absolutely. And then another interesting one, because Clemson really needs a point guard. They get Nick Honor from Fordham, who had a big freshman year, obviously on a bad A10 team, a bad team in general. But he comes in. I don't know his waiver viability. I think he's from Florida.
He went to high school in Florida at Lake Highland Prep. Yes, he's a Florida.
I don't know if Clemson's close enough to Florida to get the waiver.
I think the waiver thing is 100 miles is for the waiver. So he's from, let's see, he's from Orlando. So I don't think Orlando's 100 miles from Clemson, but I could be wrong.
Let's just Orlando, Florida to Clemson, South Carolina.
We're talking, I got it. Nope, 500 miles. Nowhere close. got a lot of Georgia to get through.
557.1 miles. So that's a little off the waiver. But I mean, Clemson's in a spot where they're in a complete rebuild anyway.
Right.
You grab this good player. You need a point guard. Try to get him the waiver. You're going to be bad anyway. So might as well try.
Agree. Absolutely agree.
In terms of lists, I was surprised that Nick Honor didn't go to Notre Dame, because his list was Notre Dame, Florida State, Clemson, and there was one other school. But Notre Dame, losing Temple Gibbs after this year, they have Prentice Hub, more of a combo guard. I thought, that's a bigger program. They're in better shape, and he would play a similar amount.
Agree. I mean, kind of going back to our original discussion of methodology of taking a a marginal grad transfer, because that's how we dove into this point guard thing, is Brandon Boyd as a marginal grad transfer, or Barrett Benson. So one of my kind of statements on why you don't take one of these marginal grad transfers is, well, I think there's 2 main reasons. One, you don't want to piss off kids you recruited who you promised playing time if they're not going to help your team. And 2, you don't want to take away the opportunity cost of going after a mid-year transfer. And so with the mid-year transfers in particular, I just kind of wanted to note a few of the guys who were on the mid-year list the last couple of years. You get Curtis Jones, who was pretty good at Oklahoma State. You had Cartier Gordon this year, who's going to DePaul. There's 2 or 3 names every year who are legit high major starters, I would say, and then a bunch of other decent players as well.
Now, with the invention of or like the prominence of the waiver this year, we lost guys from the mid-year market like Blake Harris. I think James Banks might have been one too.
No, he was a full year.
Okay, but we got three. You mentioned Curtis Jones, and then Carlton Bragg and Jordan Tucker. Those were the big three of mid-year transfers.
And this year you had Emmanuel Acott, Caden Archie, Uata Elijah Burns from Notre Dame. He wanted to Siena, but he had some bigger looks from what I was told. Maurice Kalu, who just visited Nebraska a couple weeks ago.
Is he still a mid-year guy though? Because you have to sit a year in residence without the waiver.
Well, yeah, but he's a mid-year transfer. So these are the guys who just like can't. Well,
okay, yeah, because someone could have grabbed him. Yes. Gotcha.
KJ Fegan, although he wasn't going to come, so that was a huge deal.
Abu Kijab.
Yep. Quade Green. Like there are legit names. Vontae Hendricks, his name's Devontae Retrieve as well. He's at Utah.
Antoine Walker for URI.
Right. There's a bunch of guys out there who are like, I think guys who can make it. Mike Lewis at Duquesne. Like there's a bunch of guys who are pretty good who went on the mid-year market. So I think from that perspective, if you just say like, I'm going to hold this scholarship so I can go after one of those guys instead of saying I'm going to go after, instead of I'm going to take Barrett Benson if I'm a high major. Like, I think I buy that strategy.
My only issue with that is, I think for a team like a DePaul or like a Clemson, like sure, go for it. But like if you're Gonzaga or like Cincinnati, like you in a Cincinnati's case, you have a senior laden team, that should be very, very good if they get the right point guard or just get any kind of stability there at point guard. Gonzaga, they have very high expectations to be year in, year out good. So in those cases, I don't think that you can just punt on the position like that without trying to at least upgrade.
Because it's like you're not punting on the position if you're. So like, let's use the Barrett Benson example because I've watched every game of Barrett Benson for the last 2 years. If Barrett Benson is playing more than 8 to 10 minutes a game on a high major team, you are not going to the NCAA tournament. Like he is not a good center. He fouls all the time. He's not a good rebounder. He doesn't have any post game. He's slow. Like he's a great locker room guy, great kid. Want him on my program. Want him like even in like a 5 minute a game energy role. But like anything more than that is like actively hurting. So I guess my question is like, how much better is it to bring him in and have him play 5 to 10 minutes than playing like a freshman who like is unproven 5 to 10 minutes?
Yeah, it would be like Nebraska last year. Like if they played Barrett Benson, 20 minutes instead of like Tanner Borkard and Brady Hyman. Like how much of an upgrade? Like is that enough of an upgrade? Because of the rest of the Nebraska had like so much talent, right? But they just didn't have a lot of center depth. Well, I mean depth in general, but like let's say that center depth was like their main issue, and they had these 4 other great perimeter players. Would the incremental value of getting someone who's more competent at center over like an unproven 3-star freshman, could that be good enough? Because if not, you're saying, all right, we're not going to take a grad transfer center. We're going to roll with what we have and hope that the mid-year market, because you don't know who's in the mid-year market at this time, is going to be good enough and is going to be interested enough. And so there's going to be like what, 10 to 15 relevant players max. To have the confidence that you're going to land one before you even know who they're going to be, I think that's a little risky for a team that has a direct need.
Okay, I buy it. I'm not saying you shouldn't take it because I'm not saying DePaul shouldn't take Barrett Benson because they want to wait for Cartier Gordon, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's a reason to say, okay, we've seen these grad transfers not pan out, especially the marginal ones. We can wait and hold this scholarship for a guy who will help our team for a long time, especially in a waiver system where we can get kids earlier. I think there's a real argument to be made.
Agreed.
Anyway.
I agree.
That was our transfer methodology. in case you enjoy that type of analysis on this podcast. But yeah, let's run through a bunch of these names because there's a lot to touch on. You had the full list, Brad, correct? So let's kind of run through these and get our spin on them.
Okay, so we touched on Nick Honor, who's going from Fordham to Clemson. We briefly touched on this guy. We'll go a little deeper right here. Bubba Parham from Virginia Military to Georgia Tech.
Yes. He's a dynamic scorer. He was a guy Kentucky people were like interested in because he put 35 on Kentucky earlier in the year. He's kind of that undersized combo guard type who like their production is really whether they can be a consistent scoring punch at the next level. And I think he can be because I think he'll be a good catch and shoot guy. I think he's quick enough to get to the rim. He's not like I don't think he's a game changer for Georgia Tech like a Christian Keeling would have been. But I think especially if he gets a waiver, which is possible, he could be like a 10 point per game, 23 minute per game guy. And I think Georgia Tech is a sneaky tournament team, especially if they could get Jordan Usher to be available right away.
Yeah, speaking of the mid-year transfers, Jordan Usher is a good one. He's going to be probably their starting four-man once he's eligible. How do you think Parham fits with Alvarado and DeVoe? Like, you think that the three of those guys could play together?
DeVoe's a bigger guy. He's like 6'4". I don't think you can start all three, but I think you can have a lineup where all three play together. Yes.
Yep. So then if they had Alvarado, DeVoe, say Parham off the bench, you have Usher and Banks at the 5, you get someone to emerge at the 3, either like a Khaled Moore or a Shambari Phillips. And then, one other player comes off the bench and can provide some stability. That's a strong top 7. Right now they have a really strong top 4. I tentatively would say that they just missed the tournament right now, but we'll have to do a deeper dive on that personally.
Yeah, I don't think they're a tournament team right now, but I think they're in the mix to be at this point, especially with the bottom of the ACC as weak as it will be. I think if you can beat up on that bottom, you're in good shape.
Okay, 2 guys I want to touch on together. We briefly mentioned Kenny Cooper earlier from Lipscomb to Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky also adds, in what was a shock to me, Cam Justice from IUPUI to Western Kentucky, former Vanderbilt. And basically why it was so shocking was this Western Kentucky roster right now is they have a lot of very good players between Tavion Hollingsworth, Cam Justice, Jared Savage, Josh Anderson, and maybe Kenny Cooper. I mean, Cooper's the missing piece because none of those 4 guys that just – yep.
Bassey's not gone necessarily.
Oh, yeah. And if Bassey comes back, this team should be better than what people thought they were going to be this year. Obviously, they kind of busted. But point guard's the missing piece. So if Kenny Cooper is eligible, they can go like Cooper, Hollingsworth, Justice, Anderson, Bassey, with then Carson Williams and Jared Savage off the bench. I mean, that's a really strong team.
Yeah, they're going to be really good. And they should be, if they have a point guard, they should be a top 25 team. I think Kenny Cooper is an underrated guy. I think he's really good. There's talk of Jordan Rawls reclassifying. He's like a top 150 kid. He was top 100 in 2020. And he's reclassing up to 19. It was like they reported it was guaranteed, and then it wasn't guaranteed at the same time. Right? He then tweeted out he's going to consider it. So I think what's happening is if Kenny Cooper is like able to get the waiver, like they're going to try to find out early. And then if they can get him, then they'll have if they can't get the waiver, they'll have Rawls enroll for fall class and then see if he can help out a point guard. But I think they're in really good shape roster wise. Like they look really talented. Bassey up front. They've got some guys who could play like small ball 4. I think Carson Williams could really establish for like a small ball 4 on this team. Cam Justice can really shoot. Kind of a shot creator. I feel like there's a little bit of repetitiveness between Cam Justice and Hollingsworth. They can also play Josh Anderson point guard. Brad, that's one thing I've noticed. Yep. They do that a lot last year. But I mean, there's a lot of kind of repetition on the roster in terms of overlapping talent of like 3 shot makers on the wing who can't all have the ball. But I mean, they got pieces, man. They're talented. Shout out Mark Sue, recruiting him and Stansberry.
Yeah, so I thought, once Justin Pierce decided between his 3 schools, I thought if Michigan missed on Pierce, they would grab Justice and just kind of be smaller. But they need a wing, and they're still in the market for a wing. And then in terms of Western Kentucky in Conference USA, I mean, Old Dominion should still be pretty good. They're going to take a step back without Caver and Stiff, but I mean they'll be fine. Middle Tennessee should take a step up after taking a major step back last year. Louisiana Tech's losing some guys. Marshall's losing a lot, so I mean they could be the clear favorite.
Agree. They look really good on paper. So who else we got to talk about?
We have a sit-out guy here, Eric Williams, going from Duquesne to Oregon, also considered Missouri. That was like the other name that was in the mix. But I mean, this is a pretty big pickup.
Yeah, I always liked this kid. He's like big athletic wing who can shoot it a little bit. He's kind of a scrappy rebounder. I don't know how much he's gonna play at Oregon. I would like him at Mizzou a little more, but he's like a solid like 3-and-D type who can get to the rim.
Yeah. So in terms of the Oregon depth chart, this isn't even next year. This is the year after. I mean, C.J. Walker would be a sophomore, as would Chandler Lawson. They lose Miles Norris today, who was a top 75 recruit. He's going to be a sit 1, play 3 transfer.
San Diego State, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and that'll be a great pickup for them.
Random note on that note, Brad. Before we
Yep.
get Mountain West teams, especially like San Diego State, Nevada, and Boise, are really in a great position because like all these West Coast elite recruits who want to transfer for a fresh landing spot and still want to be at a high level program, they either have to leave the West Coast and go to like Texas and play for a Big 12 school or like Big 10, or they have to go to the Mountain West because you can't transfer within conference. Like anyone at Oregon, anyone at UCLA, those guys have to transfer to like Boise. Like Emmanuel Acott winds up at Boise. Like he would have gotten a Pac-12 offer if he like wanted to, but he can go to Boise because he can't stay in the Pac-12 because he's leaving another Pac-12 school. It's this weird thing that no other high major league has the same problem with.
Yes, it's like a blessing in the curse, that the Pac-12 has such an advantage with the West Coast recruits, but then when they leave, or like maybe because they have such an advantage, like because the people have such limited options, on the West Coast, they might be more likely to leave, and then when they leave, the Mountain West and Gonzaga are there to pick up the pieces.
Like a Malachi Flynn type. There's no way that they'd wind up in the Mountain West. Like if I'm trying to think of like the perfect example, it'd be like a guy who averaged 16 at DePaul, right? Like a Big East school in Middle America. Like if Malachi Flynn leaves DePaul, there's no chance he's on the Big Ten. No chance. But because he's on the West Coast, San Diego State becomes a very intriguing option.
And Creighton really recruited Malachi Flynn. I thought he was going to go there.
Yes, I did.
Okay, next guy on our list, Christian Keeling. This was one of the bigger pickups from Charleston Southern to UNC. He's probably going to step in at that starting 2-guard spot next to Cole Anthony.
Yeah, I mean an upgrade I would say over Brandon Robinson or what's his face, Andrew Platek, the Albany native. He's good. He doesn't really defend. He's a decent shooter though. He can get to the rim. He can create and pick and roll, which is nice. Helps them push the tempo a little bit if they want to play in the Carolina break, even though you don't want to slow it down a little bit. He's a big physical guard who can handle the ball, play the 2. Just a very logical fit. Like when he was visiting Georgia Tech and Clemson, I was like, what are you doing? They're just like better, bigger programs you could go to. Brad, you there? Well, I'm just going to talk for a little while about Christian Keeling as we sort out this technical difficulty. Yeah, I mean, Keeling's good. He's a guy who went to South Alabama, played for Barclay Radabaugh. Christian Keeling played he was one of those guys who could have probably transferred up after his first or second year because he put up such big numbers. And it's going to be an interesting test case. Like there's all these guys out there who are putting up big numbers as freshmen and transferring up. And I wonder if there's a better situation by waiting and then grad transferring up for 1 year. So yeah, it's gonna be very interesting because I mean, a guy like Keeling averaged 17 points a game, 17-7 as a freshman, and then 17-5 as a sophomore, 19-7 as a junior. So I think from my perspective, it's just like, would you be better off like after your freshman year just pushing to graduate in 3 years and grad transferring, or transferring up after that freshman year and sitting out a year? Brad, I know you lost connection for a bit, but you're back. I was touching on Christian Keeling kind of being an interesting case of like could have transferred up after his first year in college, instead waits it out, graduates early, now going to UNC.
I think in that case, you probably want to strike while the iron is hot and transfer up, because even if it doesn't work out, you can still grad transfer at the end, right? Because you had to sit out a year. But like in terms of, I mean, this is a perfect fit for him currently. So I mean, it worked out, and so you probably think looking at UNC's lineup for this next year, by Cole Anthony, Christian Keeling, and then either Robinson or Black, and then they need a power forward, maybe Justin Pierce, maybe Precious Achiuwa, and then Garrison Brooks at that 5 spot, and then you have the other one of Black and Robinson off the bench. You have Armando Bacot, you still have Sterling Manley. I'm surprised still there.
I think there's also a pretty good chance they play 2 bigs.
Yeah, like Brooks and Manley to start with the Bacot off the bench,
Or Bacot.
Roy loves his veterans, though. That's
true. That's
a big Roy Williams thing. I remember when he used to start Desmond Hubert, Jackson Simmons, all these guys that kind of paid their dues and he stuck with. Next guy that we can touch on are the aforementioned Arizona Wildcats, Max Hazard, scoring guard from UC Irvine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of 50-50 on Max Hazard. I love him as like a shot maker. I guess my only question is, as a 5'10" guard, what is his role? Because he's not a point guard. Is he playing the 2 when you have a big enough point? You hope that Nico Mannion can guard 2s and he guards 1s. I mean, it's a bit of a defensive liability, although all these UC Irvine guys play great defense because of Russell Turner. But it's like when you're playing one of these like kind of pest guards like a Max Hazard who can shoot the ball. I mean, he'll be a super helpful guy as a shot creator, but I wonder how limited his role has to be because of size.
Because I mean, you have Mannion and Green in the backcourt. You have Brandon Williams coming off the bench. I mean, Dylan Smith has been in the rotation his entire career. He should. Yep. Because he can. I would be surprised if Barcello didn't leave. But I mean, they just have so many guys that it's tough to really see him playing a big role.
Agree. Yeah, it's very tough to fit in this kind of rotation right now. I think Hazard plays like 15 minutes and hit threes. I also realistically think like if his goal was just to play, he would have stayed at UCI, because I mean UC Irvine was like still a very competitive mid-major team. They had a lot back, so I think this was like I want to play for I-Major for a year and like sit on the bench and like play for Arizona. I think he has a family connection to Arizona. I want to say like that adds to it as well. So, I mean, yeah, it's just he's going to be really good for them.
Next, we have 2 players going to TCU. That is Jadion Ledee from Ohio State, kind of a power forward / small ball 5, and then combo forward Kevin Easley going from Chattanooga to TCU. He was someone who got some late interest, I think from like UMass and VCU before deciding to go to Chattanooga.
He had early interest, actually. I think he was a guy who had like he was I think originally committed to VCU when Rashawn Davis was there, then decommitted when Rashawn Davis left, and then was being recruited to UMass, didn't commit, like waited out, was quiet for a while, and then wound up at Chattanooga. But then he was terrific. He's a big wing, could shoot the ball. I think he can do a little small ball 4 stuff. Maybe a little hard to do in the Big 12, but I think he could do it. Very versatile. The sit-out year will help him. I think that's a really good get.
Yeah, so TCU losing Kouet Noy early. He's going pro, whether it's NBA or not. That's a blow. This year, I'm not sure how good that they're going to be. But I mean, they have
testing too.
What was that?
Is Desmond Bain testing?
I'm not sure. He would currently be their best player, and he's a senior.
Usually,
Yeah, he's a very good. But they have a few recruits in the pipeline between PJ Fuller and Francisco Farabello. That their backcourt should be in good shape over the coming years, and then they now have this great 3-man front court with Easley, Samuel, and Ladie for next season for 2020 2021. So the front court is all set, and now they gotta kind of shore up their wing rotation.
yeah. I think they're in decent shape, though. I like the Diad. Might be a sneaky potential waiver guy. He's a Houston native. I don't know if they need him to get a waiver. Might be a guy that's like fine to sit out a year. But he's he was fine. He was a good recruit. Just didn't really work out at Ohio State. So smart pickup for Jamie Dixon, who does a good job putting together a good roster.
Next, we have grad transfer from Valpo to Butler. Derek Smits chose Butler over NC State and Arizona State. Butler may be the starting center. Probably more likely he's a starting center at Butler than NC State or Arizona State. Although I think both NC State and Arizona State have significantly better teams than Butler for this upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, I had heard this one was coming for a while. Got kind of started questioning it when it hadn't happened yet. He'll help. I think he plays probably 20 minutes, 25 minutes, just the way he did at Valpo. He only played 22 minutes a game at Valpo this year. But he's efficient around the rim. Good size, obviously, can protect the rim a little bit, can rebound, especially in the offensive glass. I think it makes sense. Stays close to home, gets to play for Butler, who needs him. Probably the most logical landing spot.
Because they lose Brunk, but they had Bryce NZ, who could play like small ball 5. I think that's probably where he's going to see most of his minutes. So I think NZ and Smits will probably split it fairly evenly. So that's a nice recovery for Butler. Next one, we got 2 guys going to Providence. Noah Horchler from North Florida and Jared Bynum from St. Joe's. Horchler, sit one, play one, stretch big man, and Bynum, undersized, dynamic point guard, sit one, play 3.
Yeah, I think 2 solid gets if you're Providence. With Bynum, I've been told he's really good. I didn't watch a lot of St. Joe's this year just because they were kind of irrelevant after the first couple months. But, I mean, from what I remember, kind of the undersized dynamic point guard in the pick and roll, gets a year to learn the system, which is, I think, very valuable. With Pipkins, who's kind of a similar archetype as the guy as the grad transfer they can learn from. So I think that helps as well. As for Horchler, I didn't watch a lot of North Florida this year as well. Just don't get around to a lot of ASUN basketball as much as I'm a big mid-major guy. But the numbers speak for themselves. He can block some shots. He's kind of sneaky athletic. Step out and shoot a 3. Play in the post. I think it's a very, very, very solid get. One of those guys that, like, if he was a sit one, play 2, he's probably not a Providence, but because he's sit one, play 1, the door opens a little bit.
So I think he's going to be really exciting as a small ball 5. They're losing Khalif Young after this year, so he'll step in and add a new dimension where Young is kind of energy and physicality. Horchler's going to be some skill and ability to stretch the floor, something that they didn't have this past year since Ronnie Bullock graduated. And I think he'll also play at the 4. Could even start at the 4. And then Bynum, Cooley kind of got caught with having these kind of long NBA guards with David Duke, but he wasn't really a point guard. So went to the well and got 2 of them. Guys who cares how big they are? They may have some flaws, but they can go get a bucket, and that's what Providence desperately needed.
Right. I mean, that was what kind of popped out to me when I watched Providence in person against DePaul. Was like they're just kind of dribbling around. You talk about Mekhi Ashton Langford pounding into the floor all the time. I mean, they did a lot of that this season. So getting guys who just want to go get a bucket is probably a good fit.
Speaking about someone who could get a bucket previously but couldn't this past year, Charlie Moore from Kansas to DePaul. I know, Kevin, we all thought Northwestern made too much sense, but unfortunately he heads to a more crowded backcourt in DePaul.
Heartbreaking news as a Northwestern Wildcat fan. Transfer market's been quiet for Northwestern. I've heard rumblings that it's academics related. People always say it's hard to get kids into Northwestern. I don't necessarily know that that's the big problem as much as it is with transfer students, especially. You have to have guys who fit in with the whose transfers or whose credits transfer. Excuse me. It took me a really long time to formulate that sentence, but anyway, the credits transferring is always a concern. So I think that might have been an issue with some of these transfers that Northwestern's looking at, and they're still in on Javon Freeman. They're also involved with Chase Audich, who's a sit one, play three. But that's not a lot of immediate help, which is what Northwestern needs. And with 4 scholarships open, they should be taking 1 to 2 grad transfers, especially just to balance classes. So definitely a bit of a concern. But I think Moore probably starts at point guard for DePaul over Devin Gage. I'm a bigger Devin Gage guy than most people seem to be, but the consensus seems to be that Charlie Moore is better, and I would probably agree with that if you put on the Cal tape. And then Marquise Jacobs kind of gets marginalized a bit.
And speaking of waivers, I mean, Moore from Chicago. He's playing in Chicago, right? So
he'll be playing.
Yes.
No doubt.
Speaking of a situation that made too much sense, but the player actually followed through where it made too much sense. Jihad Proctor from High Point to Purdue. Purdue almost definitely losing Carson Edwards. Had a hole at that 2-guard spot. He can now be the bridge to either Brandon Newman or Eric Hunter. And if Newman and Hunter outplay him, then Proctor can come off the bench no problem, like with Evan Boudreaux this year, who was kind of a bridge to Trevion Williams and Aaron Wheeler at that 4-5 spots. So this is just a complete no-brainer win-win pickup for me.
Yeah, that was one of those like fantasy basketball ads where it's like, they need a point guard. Let's go to the list of grad transfer point guards, or not point guard. They need a shooting guard. We'll go to the list of grad transfer shooting guards, find a guy who can score and like fits that mold of a Carson Edwards type, and they get Jihad Proctor, whose journey from Iona to Purdue has been interesting. I remember him. He's like a pretty solid freshman in Iona. There was 2 guards in the incoming class that year for Iona. It was Jihad Proctor and Ricky McGill, and Proctor looked good. He was like a 6-point-a-game freshman. Like could have that tough shot maker mentality, whereas McGill like kind of looked lost all the time. And I was like, like Proctor's gonna be good. And then he transfers. Like what is going on? And the reports came after that basically he didn't like that Tim Cluse was looking at grad transfers for his position. So like they signed, I think it was John Sevier that year. And so if it's John Sevier, so he didn't want to compete for minutes, so he was like, I'm out of here. Just the High Point, puts up huge numbers, and then obviously he had a coaching change at High Point, so he decides to head off to Purdue and plays the high major level. So very good ad. I don't think he's Carson Edwards. It would be crazy to think he would be, but they needed a guy who could just go get a shot because that's the only weakness right now. They don't have guys who can go get a shot.
Speaking of guys who can go get a shot, that was a bad segue because I don't know if we have people left who can go get a shot. How about someone who can hit a shot? And that is Keith Stone, going from Florida to Miami. Surprised he didn't get a little more traction. I mean, he was a starter for Florida, can play small ball 5, floor spacer, had a down year before missing the remainder of the season with injury. But if he's healthy, this is a nice pickup for Miami. Certainly an upgrade over Wardenberg at the 4.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a very logical get. Might have just been quiet more than anything. Like he might have had the interest and we just didn't hear about it.
Yep.
Kind of the challenge of the transfer market, but kind of interested your thoughts on Miami this year because they'll still have Lakes. They're going to lose Zach Johnson. Just kind of like mapping out what their rotation is going to look like as we speak here. They're going to be what?
So Lakes, Vasiljevic, and McGusty probably on the perimeter. That's a former Oklahoma wing, Cameron McGusty, who's a scorer. And then
might get overtaken by either Isaiah Wong or Harlan Beverly. Beverly is really good.
Which could certainly happen. Both guys are top 75-ish, maybe top 85, kind of combo guardy types. I mean, they're both going to play a lot. Then Stone at the 4 with Wardenberg backing him up. The 5 is kind of weird here, where we have Rodney Miller and Den Gok, both guys redshirted this year. Gok because of it. He played in the night. He was injured at a point where I think he could redshirt. Miller seems like he just took a redshirt, but that's their 5. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Stone play a lot of small ball 5 and either Wardenberg getting the 4 minutes or going super small and getting 3 or 4 of these guards in there.
And Miami's also still in on one of the best available guys out there, Tristan Enaruna, who's being recruited by Creighton, Miami, and Kansas is his final 3. He's like a versatile combo forward, so it'd be another kind of piece in that mix. They don't have a big, as you said, but I think it's a solid group.
Yeah, I mean they're going to be right in the tournament picture. In terms of Enuora's decision, if Precious Achiuwa is going to Memphis, then I think Kansas makes a lot of sense here. He would play a lot right away at that power forward spot. But speaking of another Creighton player, Antoine Jones transferring from Memphis to Creighton, started at least at the end of the year. He was a starter on the wing, but I guess fear of being recruited over with some of the heavy hitters that Penny Hardaway is talking to, and he will go to Creighton as a sit 1, play 3.
Yeah, this is a logical move, I think. Creighton loves this archetype, as we kind of mentioned before the show when we were talking, Brad. And I think overall, if you're Memphis, and you're recruiting Lester Quinones and Precious Achiuwa and all these guys for 19, for 20 grad transfers, they're on everybody they want. Even looking forward, they want Jalen Green. So if you're Antoine Jones, what's the point of sticking around playing 15 minutes a game, never really getting a chance to shine? Might as well move as long as you still have high major looks. Creighton's a good landing spot where he'll fit the system.
Absolutely, kind of rounding out because we are winding down here. This is an interesting pickup here. Jake Forrester from Indiana to Temple. Forrester's a top 150 recruit. Did not play much as a freshman at Indiana. Kind of a crowded front court with a lot of different guys, kind of in his class. But he's a super athlete, and I think playing at Temple is kind of a chance for a fresh start. He should see more playing time.
Yeah, the whole thing with Forster always was his offensive skill level. I think he played with Cam Reddish in high school, and he was kind of this athletic 4-man, who couldn't really shoot was the problem. So he an undersized 5. I know Indiana used him as undersized 5 at times this year. So Temple's going to be interesting. They took 2 transfers actually this past week or so. Those who got Ty Strickland from Wisconsin, who was one of these late stock risers who picked Wisconsin over Rutgers, and they really get a lot of minutes and transfer right away. Which is the whole thing is weird. Why are you going to Wisconsin over Rutgers if Rutgers needed a point guard and Wisconsin was never going to play it? But anyway, he moves on after a year. So those guys will probably sit out, and then in theory, they'll help ease the blow of losing Quentin Rose after next year.
Yeah, the Strickland one was a weird pickup. I was surprised he's staying high major after barely playing at all. Similar to Miles Douglas from Central Florida St. Joe's, I was surprised he was able to land that high.
I think oftentimes it's a recruiting connection. Where it's I don't know if Temple recruited him, but there's a good chance they did. And if Temple was on him and liked him, what did that 1 year do? It's not he showed that he couldn't play, which is he wasn't better than Dimitri Trice.
Yep.
It's hardly a criticism. So you might as well take him.
Okay, next we have Matej Kavas from Seattle to Nebraska, stretch 4. Fred Hoiberg's cobbling together a nice roster. They're in the mix for Jace Johnson. If they get him, Nebraska, could be an NIT team.
Yeah, I think Kavas goes under the category of who you can guard, and he can't guard anyone in the Big Ten. He's the 6'8", skinny, not too quick guy who's not going to be able to deal with anyone in the Big Ten. So he's really just a shooter. They're so small, he'll probably play small ball 4, which any team that has 2 bigs is just going to maul them. But especially, if they lose Roby, they have no shot. If they keep Roby, is it crazy to say that Cam Mack, Jervay Green, Hanif Cheatham, Deshaun Burke, Amir Harris, Isaiah Roby, Brady Hyman, and Jace Johnson is a tournament team?
It's not crazy, but it might be too many newcomers. It might be Oregon from 2 seasons ago. Yeah, where they had Mikhail McIntosh and a bunch of newcomers, and they just couldn't gel.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a somewhat of a limb here and say that I've been mildly unimpressed by the guys that Nebraska's landing. I think Cam Mack's great. I think keeping Jervay Green's good. I don't think Calvis is that special. I don't think Neith Cheatham's that special. I mean, Jace Johnson would be nice. Some of the guys who had visit aren't as great. They had the it's like stock riser from Arkansas who was like gonna go to Southern Miss with Doc Sadler visit the other day. I don't know. Like they need bigs, I get it, but it's also like you still got to take Nebraska level kids.
So absolutely. I mean, cobbling together a competitive team is going to be nice this year, but when half those guys leave, it's going to be kind of back to the drawing board there.
The good thing is that both Cam Mack Mac's a 3-to-play guy, and Jervay Green might also be. I don't know. I don't think he is actually. Jervay Green's a 2-to-play, so they have some like class balance built out of that. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, they're gonna have you always need to get some freshmen, or else your roster's also always gonna be in flux.
Yeah.
But in this day and age, it almost makes sense to always be in flux.
Yeah, you got a couple mid-major guys. Well, this first guy isn't really mid-major, but Dazon Ingram from Alabama to Central Florida.
Another point guard type that you couldn't wind up at a place that actually needed a point guard to go to the NCAA tournament.
Exactly. I mean, he's not like a great point guard, but he would do, at Gonzaga or Cincinnati. I mean, he would certainly do, and he's going to get the ball a lot at Central Florida. He's going to be able to do what he wants on a pretty bad team. Interesting. They could also add Matt Millen, the William and Mary transfer. He's visited there. So
it doesn't matter.
He would give Ingram some floor spacing.
It doesn't matter. Look at their roster.
No, they're not going to be even an NIT team,
right?
But Ingram's going to put up numbers.
It's like avoiding sucking instead.
Yeah, the old Boston College trick with Eli Carter.
Who did Boston College tied to? Oh, KJ Lawson. I was like, that's such a weird fit.
Because they already have Jarius Hamilton.
Well, it's not even like I don't even think it's like a fit. Like it's not even like a fit thing of like he's not gonna play or like gonna play. Like it's just like why are you going to the worst high major team in the country, or like one of the worst high major rosters of the country just to put up numbers? Like his list was like Georgia State, Boston College, Oregon, and he a grad transfer with 2-to-play.
I think I have no idea what grade KJ Lawson's in because he redshirted as a freshman, right? And then he played as a redshirt freshman, but got hurt, and then transferred to Kansas, but he sat out a year. So I have no idea, what age bracket he's in.
He averaged so his list was Oregon, Boston College, Arkansas, San Diego, Nebraska, Georgia State, Butler, SMU, Tennessee State, South Alabama, UAB. I think Nebraska is the best fit.
Even with Cavas?
Yeah, because he's 6'8". Like, I could see you playing KJ Lawson as small ball 5.
Yeah.
Like, I would do it. I mean, it's not going to work out. And I don't know if pitching him on small ball 5 is what he wants to do, given his dad is listing him as guard forward. I don't know. He's not that good. Like he I think his best fit might be small ball 5.
No, absolutely.
The other list that I wanted to touch on was Admon Gilder visiting Texas Tech. That'd be perfect.
From UTEP? Evan Gilliard?
No, Admon Gilder.
Oh, yeah, Admon Gilder, yeah.
Evan Gilliard visited New Mexico State per source.
And he's considering Illinois State and one other team.
I don't know, but I just know Gilliard visited that weekend. Like 2 weekends ago, he visited New Mexico State. For the New Mexico State fan listeners on the podcast. But Admon Gilder visiting Texas Tech. I think that's interesting. I don't know that he fills the need that they have, but he's a really good basketball player.
He kind of overlaps with Ramsey and Edwards, but he's better than both those guys if he's healthy. I mean, he's proven that already. I mean, that'd be a great shooting team. Yeah, I think Texas Tech kind of needs more of a 5-man, but hard to turn down a talent like Gilder.
Texas Tech also had Yanni Wetzel visit over the weekend. Yanni Wetzel has also visited San Diego State. Interested in your thoughts there.
That's a 5. It's a floor spacer, so I mean they're going to be a very different team than they were this past year. I mean they have a lot of good guards, a lot of guys who can put the ball in the basket, and a lot of athletic guys.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. And they just grabbed the stock, another late stock riser, Clarence Nadolny, who is considering Iowa State and West Virginia. Big 12 guy.
I have to look into the dates of his offer to see if he fits my official criteria. But he has certainly raised his stock. And just lastly, just wanted to touch on 3 mid-major guys. The biggest name is Jake Toolson from Utah Valley to BYU.
Yes.
Following Mark Pope. Felipe Haas just popped earlier today from South Carolina to Mercer. He started, lots of games over his career. He wasn't a starter, but he was in the rotation for his whole career at South Carolina. And then one that I think Kevin would like to pat himself on the back for, Curtis Cobb from UMass to Wagner, after being in a preseason battle about the ability of Curtis Cobb.
Mic drop, baby. Curtis Cobb. I don't know. My thing with Curtis Cobb is I watched him at Fairfield for 2 years because so the timing of Curtis Cobb's career at Fairfield was he was playing my junior and senior year of high school. I had a lot of free time at nights. My senior year of high school was better. So if there's a MAC basketball game on, I was watching it. And Curtis Cobb was so overrated. He had all the talent in the world. He got 46 in the game. Like, he can shoot the ball, he can create a shot, but he just doesn't care. Like, he just runs on the floor, goes through the motions. When he doesn't get shots early, he phases out, quits on his team. He was a guy who put up 12 points a game, but one game was 46 and 2 games was 3. And to me, that guy wasn't very valuable. And UMass puts up 9 points a game. Your typical UMass grad transfer with A10 grad transfer average 9 a game is at least getting MAC offers, possibly higher, possibly CAA, maybe even a high major would take a shooter like a Curtis Cobb. Look at his list: Robert Morris, Wagner, Portland. Guess where he winds up? Wagner. I'm telling you, the kid's a chemistry problem. You don't want to take that kid.
And now he's the problem of Bashir Mason.
I mean, at that level, I'll take 4-15 a night. And I was fine with having him in the MAC. If I'm Sidney Johnson, I'm not saying let's run off Curtis Cobb because he can play. He can get you a bucket. You have to manage him, but he's good enough for that league that you take him and you deal with the garbage that you're gonna get from him. So I think, but any higher level, no way. I couldn't believe that UMass fans were this guy's gonna be this guy might be as good as Pipkins. Dude, no.
And I thought he was going to be better than he was, but I was shocked to see him go to Wagner after. I mean, you mentioned he played enough and produced enough at UMass to warrant a higher level of interest. So it was surprising to see him have to go to the NEC.
Yeah. Anyway, there's my rant about Curtis Cobb. Sorry, Curtis. Nothing against you personally.
And that exhausts all the guys that we that we wanted to talk about.
I think it did. Yeah, we ran through a million guys, but there's still plenty more transfers to get through as the market churns. Mekhi Ashton Langford still out there. Brad, your favorite player?
I saw his list. It was Alabama, Arkansas, Nevada, UNLV, LaSalle, and New Mexico.
Yeah. I think the New Mexico thing has some merit, or that idea, the West Coast thing, where you just get him away from his dad, you get him away from his people, and you just let him go play basketball, let him hoop. The other question is, because there's now DeMar reclassification rumors, do you take both?
If you're Pitt, I mean, Pitt has so many open spots. I mean, Pitt. I mean, why not, right?
I'm not even saying if you're Pitt. Like, if you're an A10 school, do you take, like, if you're VCU, I don't think from your perspective, Brad, you would take Mackay on his own because he's not. You don't think he's good.
Agreed.
But if you're VCU and you can get a top 100 kid and Mackay as a package, you absolutely do.
Yes. I mean, they don't have any space right now, but I think I would. I think I would.
I mean, yeah. My pipe dream is Siena gets Mackay and DeMar, but unlikely.
I think DeMar is going to. Because what it's Pitt, West Virginia, and UConn, and then Texas Tech, or like his like big four right now.
I think so. So they may not package deal it, but
yeah. I mean, Texas Tech is very hot on the recruiting trail right now, but
yeah, I mean, them and Virginia, it'll be interesting to see what the recruiting web is because they're the schools where like they're not getting elite kids to win, but like if they start getting elite kids, watch out.
Yeah, I mean, Virginia wasn't getting elite kids, but they were getting, Kyle Guy and Ty Jerome both top 40.
Right. No,
Hunter was top 75.
You're getting like the 4 year recruit. But if you're getting like the Johnny Juzangs, I mean that's gonna be impressive.
And I mean, Virginia could use Juzang more than Kentucky could for next year.
Yeah.
I mean, you could slide him in there. And you have a pretty decent top 7 with Clark, Morcell, Juzang, Key, Giacchite, Huff, and Cafaro.
Yeah, they'll be in okay shape. They just got to get Giacchite back.
Yep.
Very important. Anyway, we can talk about this transfer market all day. There's a lot of names left out there to go get. We will bring them to you as we can. We'll eventually do an episode where we run through the transfer list, but we're only an hour and 15 minutes in.
Next week we'll do it.
You probably do not want to listen to our voices ramble any longer. So we appreciate you as always listening to the pod. As always, please like, rate, subscribe, do everything you can to get this thing out there because we are trying to continue its growth into the off season and beyond. We'll hopefully have plenty of content in the off season. We'll have NBA draft takes. We'll have our deep dive series. Hopefully get a couple of interviews, maybe some coaches. We had Kyle Keller on from Stephen F. Austin last year. Possibly jinxed this team, so maybe you don't want to do that again. But we'll see who else we can grab to get on this pod because it should be a fun time. So thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great night. Thanks for enjoying the CVB Central podcast.